They called me a parasite and threw my belongings on the lawn while filming. What they didn't realize was that I legally owned almost half of everything they thought was theirs. Justice has never felt so sweet. At 27, I discovered what happens when family throws you away and finds out you own their house. 3 decades of life experience taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones waiting for their moment to destroy you. What my family didn't realize was that throwing me out would trigger the most expensive mistake of their lives. I should start with the foundation that crumbled beneath me. 6 months ago, I lost my machinist position when Henderson Manufacturing downsized. 7 years I'd poured into that place. Best job I'd ever secured, honestly. Steady income, my own studio apartment. Everything aligned perfectly until corporate restructuring shattered it all. When the pink slip arrived, I couldn't locate anything remotely comparable in compensation. After 9 weeks of relentless searching, I surrendered my apartment keys. My parents offered their converted basement until I regained stability. Mom and I negotiated $350 monthly, every dollar I could manage from my temporary position at Morrison's Building Supply. Far from ideal, but supposedly temporary. The arrangement felt manageable, even hopeful. 6 weeks later, destiny shifted. After submitting nearly 80 applications, I finally secured a machinist role at Precision Works, scheduled to begin the following Tuesday. Everything was crystallizing. I'd even shared the breakthrough with Mom during breakfast before heading to what would become my final shift at the supply store. Rolling into our neighborhood around 5:30 p.m., exhaustion competed with exhilaration about reclaiming my independence. As I navigated onto Cedar Street, an unusual gathering on our front lawn caught my attention. Strange. Then I witnessed the black garbage bags, dozens of them, scattered across the grass like battlefield debris. My mind refused to process the scene initially. I parked directly across the street, confusion mounting, when I spotted Mom positioned there with her phone extended, recording. My sister Catherine, 24, stood beside her, also brandishing her device. My brother Christopher, 29, paced frantically, visibly agitated. Dad commanded the porch with arms folded, surveying his kingdom. Stepping from my vehicle, reality crystallized with devastating clarity. Those bags contained everything I owned, my entire existence discarded like refuse. Several had burst open, spilling my clothing onto the moisture-soaked lawn. My gaming setup leaned precariously against the oak tree, completely unprotected from the elements. Mom spotted my approach and literally began narrating to her phone, declaring how her 27-year-old son was parasitically inhabiting her basement and required immediate eviction. She performed with this theatrical voice, crafting some twisted intervention documentary. My brother Christopher actually kicked one of my bags upon seeing me, announcing, "Finally, the family failure gets what he deserves." Catherine proved worse. She was live streaming to her cosmetics channel followers, approximately 15,000 subscribers, proclaiming, "You're witnessing my deadbeat brother receive his comeuppance. He owes Mom $6,500 in overdue rent." $6,500. We'd agreed on $350 monthly. 6 months maximum tenure meant $2,100 total. I'd submitted at least $1,950 of that amount. My only deficit was roughly $150, pending my final Morrison's paycheck. I attempted questioning their actions, but Dad stormed down from his perch and hurled my car keys directly at my face. They maintained duplicate keys for emergencies. The metal struck my left cheek with sharp precision. He declared I was no longer his son, that authentic men don't exploit their parents at my age. Then he issued an ultimatum: disappear within 30 minutes or face trespassing charges. The most haunting aspect was our neighbors emerging onto their porches, witnessing this public execution. Several recorded with their devices. Mrs. Patterson from the adjacent property actually shouted approval, claiming exhaustion from my decrepit vehicle, diminishing their property values. My 2011 Accord runs flawlessly, just bears scratches and a passenger side dent from a parking lot incident last autumn. Complete shock paralyzed me. The previous evening felt entirely normal. We'd even watched the playoffs together. That morning, Mom prepared my breakfast. Now this annihilation. Later, I uncovered the catalyst. Catherine had violated my privacy, searching my belongings during my work shift, and discovered correspondence from Precision Works detailing my salary offer. She presented this to Mom, who panicked because the position paid substantially well. Mom had been broadcasting to everyone that I was unemployed and exploiting their generosity, when actually I'd been working consistently at Morrison's. Apparently, she'd been lamenting to the entire family about me being this indolent burden capitalizing on their kindness. When Catherine revealed I'd be earning respectable income starting the following week, instead of celebrating my success, Mom panicked because her victim narrative would disintegrate. So she orchestrated my expulsion before I commenced the new position, preserving her martyr performance. Christopher has harbored resentment because our grandfather invested time teaching me machining skills during my youth but never connected with him similarly. Catherine simply executes Mom's commands without question. Rage nearly blinded me, but I refused to grant them the satisfaction of witnessing my breakdown. I smiled, began loading my possessions into my vehicle, and informed them to savor their victory celebration because they'd all be hearing from me imminently. The extraordinary truth: they possessed zero knowledge about the trust my grandfather established. Before his death 4 years ago, he designated me in his will as partial owner of several properties, including 45% of my parents' residence. I'd never disclosed this because I hoped to avoid family conflict. Grandpa understood their treatment of me and structured this as protection, though I never anticipated needing it. I drove to my friend David's place. He offered his couch and assisted unloading my car. I contacted my grandfather's attorney the following morning. The trust remained completely valid, and I possessed legal ownership stake in their house. They couldn't actually evict me without my consent. 7 months of enduring their constant degradation, Mom's passive-aggressive commentary, Christopher's accidental destruction of my belongings, Catherine's privacy violations. I was finished being the family scapegoat. They desired my departure so desperately. Perfect. But they were about to discover the consequences of expelling the part owner of your residence. I had the attorney preparing documentation, just awaiting the optimal moment to detonate this revelation. The morning after my humiliation, I contacted my grandfather's attorney, Mr. Richardson. Securing an appointment proved challenging since he'd semi-retired, but when I mentioned my name and grandfather, his secretary accommodated me that afternoon. Mr. Richardson's office occupied this historic downtown building. Entering there felt like Grandpa was still protecting me somehow. Mr. Richardson remembered me immediately, commenting that I possessed my grandfather's determination. We discussed for nearly 3 hours. The trust was absolutely legitimate. My grandfather had established it 4 years ago, right before his passing. I owned 45% of my parents' house, 55% of this lakefront cabin at Mirror Lake they'd never permitted me to use, and remarkably, 40% of the building housing Dad's construction business. My grandfather had been a commercial property developer, and these represented some of his holdings. Mr. Richardson displayed all the documentation. My family received copies when Grandpa died, but apparently either ignored the details or assumed I'd never discover them. He explained my grandfather structured it this way because he worried about my family's treatment of me. Turns out Grandpa had seen through their manipulation years earlier. During this period, my phone exploded with notifications. Mom called 37 times that first day. I let every call reach voicemail. Her messages evolved from furious, "Where are you? You need to collect your remaining junk," to fabricated concern, "We're worried about you," to threatening, "If you don't respond, we're donating everything." I texted once, simply stating I was safe and would handle my remaining belongings soon. She immediately called 6 times consecutively. I didn't answer. Christopher texted claiming Mom was overreacting, that it wasn't serious, and maybe we could resolve this like adults. The same individual who literally kicked my possessions and called me a failure now wanted adult conversation. My sister's texts were the most offensive. First, "Hey, I hope you're not upset about the stream." It was just content. Then she had the audacity to ask if she could feature my dramatic exit in her next video. I blocked her number immediately. Dad never contacted me directly until day 4, when he texted demanding I come sign some papers. No explanation of what papers, no apology, just expected my obedient appearance like a trained subordinate. With Mr. Richardson's guidance, I initiated the process of formally claiming my ownership rights. We sent certified correspondence to my parents, notifying them that I was exercising my rights as part owner of the properties. Nothing aggressive yet, just making it official that I understood what I owned and wouldn't retreat. The following day, I started at Precision Works. The compensation was genuinely good, not wealthy, but sufficient for my own place and building savings. My supervisor Marcus seemed decent, and the work matched my qualifications perfectly. Wednesday brought something unexpected. During lunch break, Christopher appeared at my new workplace. I had no idea how he discovered my location. He approached with fake friendliness, asking about my well-being, claiming the family was concerned. When I asked how he found me, he became defensive, saying Mom and Dad were just worried and wanted to ensure my safety. Then he switched tactics, suggesting I should return home so we could figure things out. I told him I wasn't interested in their manufactured concern after public humiliation. He grew angry, calling me dramatic and selfish. Then he revealed his true purpose. Apparently, Mom had searched more of my belongings and found papers about land Grandpa left me. Christopher claimed it was worthless property and Mom wanted me to transfer it to the family since I didn't need it. I nearly laughed in his face. They still had no comprehension of what Grandpa actually left me. I told Christopher I wasn't signing anything, and he needed to leave. He confronted me aggressively, saying I'd regret making this difficult and that family should unite. I reminded him we weren't family anymore. His words, not mine. He shoved me forcefully before storming away. My colleagues witnessed everything, which was embarrassing, but at least there were witnesses. Yesterday, Mr. Richardson called with news. Turns out my family had been collecting rent from the vacation property and Dad's business building, rent I was legally entitled to a percentage of. They'd never disclosed this income to me. We're discussing thousands of dollars over 4 years that should have been mine. Mr. Richardson sent another letter yesterday afternoon, detailing the financial accounting we're requesting and my rights to back payment of rental income. He predicted we'd receive a response quickly. He was correct. Around 1 a.m., my phone erupted with notifications. Mom sent 14 texts consecutively, all capitals, demanding I call immediately. Christopher texted asking my location, saying Mom was losing it. Catherine sent a lengthy message claiming she deleted the live stream too late and that we needed to talk. Even Dad, who hadn't spoken more than 15 words to me in months, sent a message saying to call urgently. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded everything to Mr. Richardson. He said, "This is just the beginning. We haven't even reached the part where I can potentially force property sales if they don't cooperate. I found an apartment today. Small, and the neighborhood isn't prestigious, but it's mine. I'm signing the lease tomorrow and moving this weekend. First month's rent and security deposit from my first Precision Works paycheck." Ironically, a week ago, I was the family disappointment who couldn't support himself. Now, I'm the family member they desperately need to communicate with, but I'm finished talking. From now on, they can speak with Mr. Richardson. 3 weeks elapsed since my last conversation with them, and the situation escalated from intense to absolutely explosive. I'd settled into my new apartment, nothing luxurious, just a one-bedroom with temperamental heating and neighbors who apparently believed 2 a.m. was ideal for furniture rearrangement, but it was mine and nobody could discard my belongings on any lawn. The first major revelation dropped when Mr. Richardson sent the detailed property ownership breakdown to my family. Turns out my grandfather had been far more specific in the trust than even I realized. Not only did I own percentages of the properties, but the trust contained specific protections against them attempting to sell or refinance without my consent. My parents had been extracting equity loans against both properties for years. Dad's business wasn't performing nearly as well as they pretended, and they'd been using the properties as their personal bank account. According to the trust, they needed my signature for any loans after my grandfather's death. They never obtained it. That rendered those loans potentially invalid. The day after they received the complete trust details, my Aunt Margaret, Mom's sister, appeared at my apartment. I have no idea how she located my address. I suspect they followed me from work. She arrived with fake sweetness, bringing homemade brownies like we were close friends. We'd spoken perhaps 12 times in the last 6 years. Margaret claimed she was just checking on me because the family was concerned. Then she spent 25 minutes explaining how my mom was experiencing anxiety attacks and my dad's blood pressure was dangerous because of my vindictive behavior. I asked her if they had anxiety when they threw my belongings on the lawn and filmed it. She couldn't answer that. Before departing, she revealed the real purpose of her visit. They wanted me to just communicate with them and work something out as a family. I told her they could contact Mr. Richardson. She left the brownies. I discarded them immediately, not taking any chances after their behavior. 2 days later, my sister Catherine direct messaged me on Instagram. She deleted all her posts about me, shocking, and wanted to reconnect. She claimed she never intended for the live stream to hurt me and was just trying to create content for her followers. Then she had the nerve to ask if I would consider doing a reconciliation video with her because family drama videos perform really well. I blocked her immediately. The following day, my phone rang. Unknown number. It was my dad's business partner William. I'd always respected William, so I answered. He said my dad asked him to reach out because I wasn't responding to the family. William seemed genuinely confused about the entire situation. Apparently, my dad told him I was trying to steal the business building out of nowhere. I explained what actually happened. William was quiet for an extended period, then said he had no idea about any of it. Not about me being expelled. Not about the trust. Nothing. He said my dad had told everyone I'd moved out voluntarily to find myself, or some nonsense. Later that day, I received an email from Mr. Richardson. He'd completed the financial analysis of the rental income I should have received from the properties. Over 4 years, they'd collected over $68,000 that I was legally entitled to a percentage of. $68,000, while I was struggling to pay rent, working at a building supply store, being called a parasite and a failure. Mr. Richardson filed formal paperwork demanding financial records and back payment. He also notified the banks about the potentially invalid loans. That's when the real harassment commenced. Christopher appeared at my work again. This time he wasn't alone. He brought 2 of his friends. They attempted to corner me in the parking lot. Christopher was demanding I drop this lawsuit nonsense. There was no lawsuit yet, and that I was destroying the family. His friends stood there trying to appear intimidating. I told Christopher that if they didn't leave immediately, I'd call the police and file for a restraining order. They departed, but Christopher shouted that this wasn't over. I installed a security camera outside my apartment door that night. The following morning, I had 23 missed calls from my mother. She left voicemails alternating between weeping and screaming. In one, she was sobbing about, "How could I do this to my own family?" In the next, she was shrieking that I was ungrateful and selfish. Really stable behavior. I didn't respond to any of it, just forwarded everything to Mr. Richardson as he instructed. But yesterday, things reached an entirely new level. I was grabbing lunch at this deli near work when my dad walked in. He spotted me and approached directly. For a moment, I thought he might actually strike me. Instead, he sat down uninvited and attempted to act calm and reasonable. He said they'd received the financial demands from my lawyer and that I was making a significant mistake. Then he said if I didn't drop everything immediately, he would ensure everyone in town knew what kind of son I was. I asked what exactly that meant. He claimed he had evidence that I'd stolen from the family business years ago when I briefly worked there during college. Complete fabrication. I never stole anything. But the threat was clear. Back off or he'd attempt to ruin my reputation. I simply looked at him and said the evidence better be compelling because false accusations are defamation, and Mr. Richardson would be very interested in adding that to our case. He slammed his hand on the table and left. On my drive home, my mom called again. This time, I answered. She immediately started crying, saying Dad didn't mean what he said. They were just stressed about money, and couldn't we work this out? Then she switched tactics completely and said they'd always supported me, and this is how I repay them by trying to take their house and business. I reminded her that they expelled me. They humiliated me publicly. They called me a parasite and a failure, and now they were facing the consequences of their actions. She said I was breaking her heart and hung up. This morning, Mr. Richardson called with an update. The bank is investigating the loans taken out against the properties. If they determine the loans were obtained fraudulently by not disclosing my ownership and obtaining my signature, My parents could face serious financial trouble. He also received a copy of the trust's complete terms. Turns out my grandfather included a specific clause that if my parents contested the trust or tried to prevent me from exercising my ownership rights, their percentages would be reduced by 15% each year. They've been fighting this for 4 weeks now. Oh, and remember my sister's 15,000 followers? Some of them found my Instagram somehow and have been sending me clips of the live stream she claimed she deleted. In one clip, she's literally laughing while Mom throws my clothes on the ground, saying, "This is what happens when you mess with our family." Mr. Richardson says we're meeting Monday to discuss next steps. He mentioned something about forcing a property sale if they don't cooperate with the financial settlement. For 27 years, I thought I was the family disappointment. Turns out I was just the family ATM they never got to access. Well, now the ATM is permanently closed, and it's time to collect all the fees they've been avoiding. 2 months have passed since that pivotal Monday meeting with Mr. Richardson, and I wanted to provide you with the final chapter of this entire ordeal. That Monday meeting was absolutely eye-opening. The situation was even more severe than we'd initially understood. Not only had my family been taking rental income that partially belonged to me, but my dad had also been using the properties as collateral for business loans without disclosing the trust's existence to the banks. Mr. Richardson laid out 3 options: force the sale of all properties and split proceeds based on ownership percentages, have them buy out my shares at current market value, or establish a formal property management agreement where they keep ownership but must pay me back rent plus ongoing income. I decided on a modified version of option 3. I wasn't trying to make them homeless, but I also wasn't going to let them escape accountability. The day after our meeting, Mr. Richardson sent over the formal terms. My family had 1 week to agree, or we'd proceed with option 1, forced sale of everything. Guess who appeared at my apartment that night? All of them. Mom, Dad, Christopher, and Catherine. I didn't allow them inside, just conversed through the door with my security camera recording everything. Mom was weeping. Dad was attempting to appear reasonable. Christopher was sulking, and Catherine kept glancing at her phone like she was desperate to record. I told them I wasn't discussing anything without Mr. Richardson present. Dad became angry and said I was hiding behind lawyers instead of handling things like family. That's when I reminded him that he was the one who declared I wasn't their son anymore when he threw my car keys at my face. Hard to play the family card after that. They left after approximately 25 minutes of accomplishing nothing. The next day, Mr. Richardson called to say they'd contacted their own lawyer. Progress, I suppose. That weekend, something interesting happened. I encountered my dad's business partner William at the grocery store. He seemed uncomfortable but stopped to talk. He said the business was in serious trouble because the bank had frozen their credit line after learning about the ownership issues. Then he told me something that explained so much about why my family treated me the way they did. Apparently, my grandfather had originally planned to leave the business building entirely to me, not just 40%. He'd told my dad this years ago. My dad panicked and spent years convincing my grandfather that I was irresponsible, lazy, and couldn't handle it. The whole "Michael is a failure" narrative didn't start recently. My dad had been promoting it for over a decade. William had always found it strange how my dad discussed me versus how I actually was when I worked there during college. He said my dad had been terrified that I'd somehow discover the trust and take everything. 2 days later, I received a text from Christopher asking to meet alone. I agreed but chose a busy coffee shop and brought a friend to sit at a nearby table just in case. Christopher appeared looking like he hadn't slept in days. He admitted he'd always been jealous because Grandpa clearly favored me. While I was learning valuable skills with Grandpa, Dad was telling Christopher that I was a family disappointment. Christopher actually apologized for kicking my stuff and said he'd been trying to earn Dad's approval his entire life. I told him I appreciated the honesty, but it didn't excuse what he did. He nodded and said he understood. Before leaving, he mentioned that Mom and Dad were fighting constantly now, with Dad blaming Mom for provoking me by throwing me out. The next day, Mr. Richardson called. My family's lawyer had reached out with a counteroffer. They wanted to keep the house, but were willing to sign over the vacation property and business building percentage completely to me if I dropped the back rent demands. Nice try, but no, Mr. Richardson, and I rejected it and restated our terms. 3 days before our deadline, I got an email from Catherine. She'd lost almost 4,000 followers after some of them found out what really happened. Apparently, one of her followers had recognized me from high school, remembered I was actually a hard worker, and called her out in the comments. Others had started investigating and found old posts where she contradicted her parasite brother story. Her sponsors were backing out, and she blamed me for ruining her brand. I didn't even bother responding. The day before the deadline, their lawyer contacted Mr. Richardson accepting our terms with minor modifications. The key points: I would maintain my ownership percentages in all properties. They would pay me all back rent owed, approximately $28,000 in monthly installments. A formal property management company would be hired to handle all rental income going forward. They would make a written acknowledgement that they had misrepresented the financial situation. They would issue a formal apology for the public humiliation. I agreed to the payment plan, but added one condition. They had to explain the truth to the extended family and neighbors who witnessed my humiliation. The day they signed the agreement, my mom texted asking if we could put this behind us and be a family again. I didn't respond. A week later, I received a check for the first payment. It came with a handwritten note from my dad saying he was sorry and he hoped we could talk sometime. Too little, too late. I found out from a cousin that my parents had a family meeting where they had to explain what had really happened. Apparently, many relatives were shocked to learn about the trust and how they treated me. Some hadn't even known I was thrown out. My brother Christopher texts occasionally. I respond sometimes. He's trying to start his own business and asked for advice. I gave him some basic suggestions but kept it brief. Catherine's still angry with me. She had to remove all her videos mentioning me and lost a major sponsorship deal. She sent a fake public apology that Mr. Richardson made her rewrite 4 times before it was acceptable. As for me, I'm thriving. The money from the property income meant I could move to a significantly better apartment. I've been at Precision Works for almost 4 months now and just received a promotion. I'm saving up to eventually purchase my own place. Sometimes I wonder if my grandfather knew exactly how this would all unfold. The trust was structured so specifically to protect me, almost like he anticipated they might try to push me out someday. Last week, I found an old voicemail from him on a backup drive. It was from right before he died. He said he was proud of me and that he'd established something to ensure I'd always be secure. Said I might not understand it now, but someday I would. Guess that day arrived sooner than either of us expected. People ask if I regret what I did, if I think the response was too harsh. Honestly, no, they humiliated me publicly, called me a parasite and a failure, and threw me out on the street while filming it for entertainment. They weren't sorry until they realized it would cost them financially. I don't hate them anymore. I just don't need them. And that feels better than any revenge could. Will I eventually talk to them again? Maybe. But it'll be on my terms, as an equal, not as the family scapegoat. And they'll never have financial power over me again. That's the thing about throwing someone away. Sometimes you don't realize what you're losing until it's gone. Now I'm rebuilding my life, one day at a time, stronger than I ever imagined possible.